Deep sea divers, what are your horror stories? I wear contacts, so getting water in my mask is extra bad as I can't open my eyes underwater. Shortly after being told about a shark colliding with my friend from behind and removing his mask, I am pretty scared about this, not sharks in general, and I see a shark heading for me. They are curious, they often shoulder bump you as they turn at the last second. But she wasn't changing course. I stayed calm and still as long as I could, and at the last second before she hit my mask I ducked. Except instead of ducking under, I just headbutted her right in the nose. Everyone saw and thinks it was the funniest thing ever. I may be the only person alive who headbutted an 11-foot shark in the nose, but it was because I was scared she would take my goggles off. Diving the day before a hurricane on a small South Pacific island. Out of nowhere a black and white sea snake, venomous, wrapped itself around my arm. Apparently this happens from time to time before major storms. They can sense it and look for things that are heading towards the shore so that they don't have to put in so much effort to get out of the sea. As soon as I was in the shallows it uncurled and headed up the beach where it hid under a breadfruit tree. I thought I was going to get bitten to death by a snake at sea. Turns out I was just a taxi for a very calm but rather rushed reptile. I've often heard that sea snakes are extraordinarily venomous but also extraordinarily chill and rarely bite, but I'd probably not remember that when one wrapped itself around my arm. The only scare I've had is some jackass in a yacht cruising through our dive location at full throttle. You could hear the boat coming for a solid minute or two before it flew over our heads. Our boat had a dive flag on it and we had a boy with a dive flag on it. They didn't even slow down. Barracuda, sharks, rays, manatees, dolphins. All cool. Humans are way scarier. I work as a paddling coach on lakes. The number of times I've attempted to gesture at a pleasure craft for them to stop, only to have some dude in cargo shorts wave back like an idiot, is higher than I can count. Night diving is incredibly creepy. You don't realize how dark the ocean is until you are in it. My biology teacher told us that she once was swimming in the south of the Philippines because she was trying to find an elusive seahorse, and she went quite deep at night when they are more active, and she got attacked by a shark and her team got out fast. The next day they found a turtle that was bitten in half, shell included, that was pretty big, and it's supposedly the last time she went diving in that area. Sounds like a tiger shark. One of my diving instructors had a scary as hell story about diving on a reef and having a large one charge her out of nowhere. She turned before it hit and it bumped her air tank as it veered to the side. Needless to say, she got the F out as soon as she could after that. I once had diarrhea at 100 feet. That sucked. It was amazing how warm it made me at depth, but was a nightmare to clean up. I vomited at my own stench, or maybe from the flu. Edit. Thank you for awarding one of the most truly horrible experiences of my life. Some say everything happens for a reason. I now like to think I endured that literal shit show. This happened in front of maybe 20 people, so that years later I would be able to entertain a few anonymous strangers. The Byford dolphin diving bell accident. Long story short, some divers came up from an extremely deep dive at an oil drilling rig, and someone effed up the decompression procedure and opened the door while the chamber was still pressurized at depth. The 4 divers were instantly killed, and the one nearest the door literally exploded and they found bits of his body all over the oil rig. So, next time someone tells you that people don't explode in decompression chambers like you see in the movies, tell them they're wrong. I was diving under an oil rig between Long Beach and Catalina Island. I was collecting sea scallops at around 60 feet or so, and knowing that there were seals all around, I always kept an eye out for sharks. You just can't help but think about them. So I was just about to finish my dive, but I was looking for one more scallop for dinner and I saw a blur swoosh right by me just in front of my face. My initial immediate reaction was shark, but it was just a damn seal playing with me. I literally was screaming underwater for a couple of seconds. Funny thing is, I have over 25 logged open water dives, some at night, mostly around Catalina, and I never saw a shark. Was doing a boat dive and came up to find 20-foot swells. We just had to chill for a while down under until the boat would calm down and we could actually grab the ladder without getting smashed. I remember seeing the ladder going up and down 6-8 feet at a time. I finally grabbed the rope and climbed up as fast as I could. I hung onto the ladder and the boat crew grabbed my BCD and hauled me out of the water and onto the swim step. Half the divers puked on the way back into port. That was the roughest conditions that I have ever been diving in. Honestly, the things that really scare me, makes my heart run fast etc. are too. If my air consumption looks funky, suggesting a leak or the current is suddenly fast, basically anything that could lead to life-threatening issue due to running out of air. When you're deep, you can't just fly back up and be fine, hurting reefs. Like honestly, if my hand brushes against one, even dead, or gets super close so the dust unsettles because of the current or something, I feel so guilty. One of my biggest fears is running out of air and not knowing until you're out. I've seen people step on refs accidentally and it cut them. Is that true in real life or only movies? If it's true, then I'd be scared of that. Only thing that really scares me is lung expansion injuries. So the one time I was freaked out was swimming near a wreck at about 100 feet. I lost perspective and buoyancy control and suddenly realized I had surfaced about 40 feet in 30 seconds or less. Visions of the bends and a popped lung instantly came to mind and dropped a ton of air from my BC to get back to depth in a hurry. Got a massive squeeze from it in my ears, but it gave me a chance to calm the F down and get a better sense of where I was and re-establish buoyancy control. Bottom line, the scariest things that can happen while driving is the shit you can do to yourself. I was diving in the early 90s off the coast of Florida. I had been using a spearfish ineffectually for a few minutes when I heard a strange grinding noise to my right. I turned my head to see an enormous set of barracuda jaws grinding just inches from my face. I still recall the fish's eye rotating around to check me out as if considering it should take a bite or not. I dove the Great Blue Hole of Belize when I was 16. I was 150 feet underwater, and about a total of a dozen bull or reef sharks were swimming above and below me in circles. Regardless of all of the sharks, 11 out of 10, coolest experience I've ever had. My dad has shit his wetsuit while diving. Got up to the surface and had to peel it off. I swear these comments, it's either some crazy shit like people getting hit by boats, animals, or equipment failure, then there's, oh yeah, my dad shat his wetsuit. This will probably get buried, but I once had a mask squeeze whole lobster diving at night, where I burst a blood vessel in my eye and my mask filled up with blood. It was pitch black and all I could see was red in my eyes through the glow of my light. Eventually, I was able to flush my mask enough to clear the blood and get back to bagging lobster. I hit bag limit too. Not mine, but my uncle's. My uncle got lost from a group and was beginning to start surfacing when 5 or 6 guys grab him and drag him to a small boat. Turns out he strayed into a very small military installation nearby and didn't realize it. He got grabbed up by some Navy divers. Kinda crazy. Not exactly a horror story, but that one time as we were circling a reef I saw a huge eye that belonged to something buried in a sand. We just looked at each other as I passed by. I can tell it was definitely curious but non-aggressive. Had a weird feeling afterwards. I got bent. The DCI lead to 2 strokes on top of the normal DCI stuff. This was back in 2014, and I am still dealing with the complications. All because I did my math wrong and have a PFO I didn't know about. Because of my time in the chamber I have really bad PTSD, so I have a service animal, and I don't sleep. I just am claustrophobic all of the time. The people with the worst stories aren't here to tell the tale. Not terrible, but in the moment it was a bit scary. I was with a group at a coral reef. Some of them were spearing lionfish. I watched. Personally, I don't like killing things, since they are invasive and hurt the corals. The dive resort cooks any that are caught and gives them to do. As my buddy was cutting the spines off of one, I saw a shark's outline in the distance. Luckily it swam in the opposite direction. But with half my dive party, 10 plus, spearing the fish, I was afraid it would attract some unwanted friends. Threw up underwater around 60 depth on the way back up from around 140, due to a combination of motion sickness and wicked hangover. Fun fact, The second stage regulator, the part that goes in your mouth, is designed to still function even if you puke. I do underwater constitution for a living, and my scariest moment was when I was trying to rig up a concrete slab that was a couple £1,000 to get picked out of the water by a crane. It started to tip over while I was working on it, and I had to jump out of the way quickly to avoid it falling on me. When it fell, it landed right on my dive hose that supplies me air from the surface. Luckily, the force of it hitting the ground broke the slab and I was able to shimmy my dive hose between the pieces with a lot of effort. This all happened about 70 feet from surface. I had a panic attack in strong current while at 100 feet. I was diving the Corsair wreck in Hawaii. All my mind wanted to do was spit out my regulator and swim to the surface. I held my regulator in my and kept telling myself, if you go up right now, you will die. Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. What do? We swim, swim, swim. Got caught in a down current on a wall dive. Went from 12 meters to 41 meters very, very quickly. Fully inflated BCDS weren't enough to combat the current. Clinging to a wall, much deeper than the dive was planned for, trying to inch sideways to get out of the current was the scariest moment of my life so far. It was a group of instructors diving, so the training paid off, and a burst eardrum was the worst injury of the day. But, sheer terror. The wall we were diving was over 200 meters deep. Had we not found a hold on it, we would have most likely lost our lives. I was diving a shipwreck surrounded by sharks. They would swim straight at you and turn when they got within a foot of your face because they thought you had food, but that wasn't the scary part. This ship was ripped in two with parts scattered along the seafloor. There was a section of the boat that was still intact but pitch black inside. I stuck my head in with a flashlight and was surrounded by lionfish. They are very poisonous and you don't F with them, so I got out real quick. I've been ice diving, and let me tell you, nothing is more terrifying than losing track of where you cut your hole. Bloodworms on my first night dive. I was not aware that they were a thing and that I would have the feeling of tons of tiny creatures wriggling over my face. Most nerve-wracking close call was hearing a boat drive over us, and then see a fist-sized sinker followed by a hook, with bait come in between me and my dive buddy, as we were looking at each other. We were at about 90 feet, so fishing with that setup where we were seemed out of place to begin with. Damn rookies. Should have grabbed it and gone for a ride. See what the fisher does when he pulls up a person. I went on a night dive with Paddy. Since I went alone, the instructor decided to pair up with me. This was my first night dive and it was eerily amazing. When it was about time to wrap things up, I look around for my partner who was nowhere to be found. In fact, I couldn't find any divers. I started to panic until I looked up and saw 7 little glow sticks floating at the surface of the water. I calmed down for a brief moment until I looked around again and realized I was alone at about 100 feet, in the pitch black. One of the scariest moments of my life, but what a rush. Not deep sea diver. One time I dove with my dad during a tropical storm. Once you get 10 feet down it's not bad. One of my last dives I had an asthma attack 45 feet down. I was with 20 other people including my bestie. So that far down and can't rapidly ascend. They got me to concentrate on my breathing and slow it down the best I could. I just listened to the bubbles and that helped. Finished the dive and then my bestie ran out of air and did an emergency ascent on the same dive. First thing I saw on my last dive, as soon as I got in the water, was a juvenile white shark circling the boat, one big kitty. So definitely not a deep dive, only about 60 feet down. I was still a fairly new diver and was diving in the harbor with a group of friends. The dive was awesome, saw like 10 turtles. We were returning to the boat and all of a sudden a deafening explosion went off. It felt like someone punched me in the chest and my ears were ringing. We make it safely back to the boat and it turns out the military was setting off underwater ordinances and didn't broadcast this information to the boat captain. Definitely the scariest moment of my life. Not necessarily deep sea, but I frequently cave dive. The scariest part for me is when you and your group turn off your flashlights, it becomes pitch black and you can't see anything. It really makes you feel hopeless. I had a 10-foot tiger shark stare me down with her gnarly looking teeth. She just kept getting closer and closer. She got right up to us then just kinda hung out. She was a pretty sweet girl. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.